in learning happen. Today we're with Michele Cahill from Carnegie Corporation. Hi, Michele.
Hi, Tom. Glad to be here.
Hey, great to talk with you. You and I have worked together for 15 years, trying to find solutions to urban education. And I just wanted you to talk this morning about why schools need partners. So why do they need capacity and funding partners? What kind of role do you see them playing?
Sure. So, your smart cities idea really suggests that, in the sense that young people grow up in environments that impact on socioeconomic, cultural, personal assets that can be either tapped into and support their development, or they can actually thwart their development and make it harder for young people to have social mobility and to get educated in ways that they need to be. So schools have a huge task to do, a very heavy lift right now. And to be able to build on those assets, to access those assets for young people, requires partnerships, but partnerships that also have design elements and guiding principles, so that all of this fosters the kind of, what people call an education ecosystem or whatever, but fundamentally expands the learning opportunities for young people. Can I give you a couple other ideas of why
that'd be great.
Need it? I was in a district. I was senior counselor for education policy and responsible for the secondary school and new schools in New York City for quite a number of years. Partners bring flexibility to a big system. They offer the chance to innovate in some ways that are thwarted by bureaucracy and thwarted by the constraints in a public system. A very, very important role for partners is as mediating organizations or mediating institutions with families to help build trust, with young people, who can take risks in some partnership organizations that are not as easy to do. And there are also ways in which the system can innovate and, if they're dynamic, bring new ideas in, and also identify talent that can, in a dynamic way, support the responsibilities of the people inside the schools. A final way that I wanted to, it's not a final way, but a really important way, is we have to think about schools as pathways, and partners need to be on every end of that. So, you're familiar, because we did it many years ago, the beginnings of early college, high schools, but all of the kinds of partnerships with higher education, which are not only direct service in the sense of something like dual enrollment, but also for actually bringing some coherence to what we mean by high expectations. So the porousness of the system, whether it's through mediating partners or pathway partners or innovation partners, is important.
That's a really amazing. That's an amazing list. Let's touch on talent. It feels like I think you and I really started the last decade with a conviction that new schools were terribly important, and I think we learned a lot about that. But sort of simultaneously, talent ecosystems were being built in almost every major city in the country. Alternative pathways, new and better evaluation systems, new PD systems, bringing new talent into the sector and doing a better job of developing it. What do you think we've learned about that?
Well, I think the first thing is that we learned that schools needed to seriously concentrate on their core business of instruction, and that the talent pathways were not strong enough, and that they were existing with too much bureaucracy, too much history in terms of the way teachers were prepared, licensing, a whole range of things, and that all the other innovations were going to be thwarted by this. So in a way, that whole movement, I think, developed with both positive and unfortunate dimensions to it as a single part of the core of
Right.
what happened. Since, of course, education is a people endeavor. The aspect of where we are now, I think, is that we have to break out of that sense. Well, first of all, those partnerships were important because that was a very stuck system.
Right.
It was had problems, you could say, neutrally of maturity, that had just matured in ways that were calcified. So
Right.
that was important to break.
For all the reasons that you described, you need partners to invest. You need
Yeah.
partners that give you an excuse to try something new. You needed partners to bring innovation and technology. Right? All the reasons that you described
Yeah.
were necessary for a better talent pipeline.
Yeah, and they were. It was a very both important and also somewhat straightforward way in
Right.
which you could do recruit, prepare, recruit,
Right.
deploy, assess.
So that seems to have proven true in most urban areas, that this talent ecosystems make a big difference. One hypothesis that we're testing with this project is whether tapping into the technology ecosystems is going to be as equally important going forward. New York City is one of the most innovative cities on the planet. There's an extraordinary ed tech ecosystem in New York, and it feels like schools are just beginning to tap into that. Do you have thoughts on whether and how the New York City schools and this thriving ed tech ecosystem, whether building more connections between those two are going to prove to be important?
I think ed tech is exactly where the dynamic of school design needs to be pushed up into a much more powerful driver for that, because it is the ways in which, when that is true, you get an ownership and a drive to fix things.
Right.
So, to be able to purchase things that can be assessed, etc. Too often, the ed tech acquisition has been modeling the old system instead of modeling the new system.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. There's a lot of smart kids building small apps for yesterday's schools.
Yes, and also CIOs, and I'm not speaking about New York City here. I've actually worked in a lot of districts. CIOs trying to fit that with their enterprise systems, rather than being driven by what is the nature of the learning problems and challenges that.
So, I mean, Michelle, this is why I so appreciate your opportunity by design work, because my hypothesis is that it's OD and IT. It's when you create new learning environments, new learning experiences supported by a new set of tools. That's the opportunity set for teachers and kids.
Yes, exactly. And people confuse that by entering in either place and either seeing technology. If you're about school design, you see technology as an enhancement. This could help us. Or if you're on the IT stuff, you're often selling products without paying attention to a really typical problem, that there's going to have to be using time differently for this, groupings differently. Teachers, and then of course there is a huge challenge in how we get the teachers to be able to manage all of the IT choices in easy ways.
Yeah. Michelle, the cities you're working with, Denver, Cleveland, Philadelphia, are you optimistic that you're going to see interesting combinations of organizational design and new tools being put to work?
Yes, I mean, I think it's early days, and as in many things you and I have done together with new schools, what happens at the early days is really important.
Right.
So, having, in the new schools effort in New York City, setting it up as a design competition that brought in community partners, higher ed, but also teachers and principals who wanted change, but they had a set of design characteristics.
Right.
I think it's a similar notion. So if you put this in, and the important piece here that has both is analogous and also somewhat different given the time change, is you have to have also something you're designing against. In New York, we were looking at region standards, which were really a big lift from where the school systems were 10, 12 years ago. Here, higher standards, common core standards that you're innovating around and around design principles. And then I think the thing that's most closely related to ed tech here is mastery. That we're
Right.
looking at mastery of knowledge and skills together across time.
Michele, if people want to learn more about the work you're supporting, can they find it at springpoint.org?
Yes.
So springpoint.org is a new organization set up to support the work in Denver, Cleveland, and Philadelphia.
And New York.
And New York, great.
There's schools in New York as well.
It's definitely worth watching. Love the design principles that are behind that. We really appreciate your work, Michele, and thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for the opportunity, Tom, and thanks for everything you're doing in this great endeavor to improve outcomes for our kids.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.